They say no news is good news, and I think that is almost always the case with Star Wars TV and movies sometimes, because it feels like every time we get a headline, it's something negative lately, and I hate that that's the case, but we just have to talk about today the fact that we are speaking about delayed TV shows once again. Disney Plus UK came out with their most recent 2024 schedule, and there were a lot of notable omissions from the schedule. Only 2 Star Wars projects on there, and that's what we're going to get into and talk about today. We also have a lot of other news stories to cover. There's lots of good news out there to talk about, and so we have a lot of good news there. We have a great How the Force Works question that we're super excited to get into, and we have what I have a really cool Star Wars moment of the week. We'll see if my co-host has an equally cool Star Wars moment of the week. And that voice you heard is my co-host. It is none other than the delayed Deveronian himself, Colin Archer.
Hey, the Deveronians are really cool. Thank you. That's cool. Man, one of the biggest pieces of news I'm excited about, you need to stay tuned for this. And because we got a special, what would you call this, a preview? We got a surprise in our email.
Yeah,
we did. That's going to be a big piece of news that we are so excited about. We'll get to that.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it. I'm very pumped about that surprise that we got in our email. It's worth talking about. But, we can dive into talking about the meat of the podcast right off the bat. We're just going to get right quick to it. I said it at the top of the show. Disney Plus UK released a report detailing their 2024 release schedule. It had on it The Acolyte and Skeleton Crew, matches up with what we've been saying, what we've been hearing. All good news. Super excited for those shows to come out. But it had some notable omissions. The notable live-action omissions were Andor and The Mandalorian Season 4. And, Colin, what do you make of this?
So the first thing that is striking to me is about Andor. This is all affected and is thrown out of whack by, if you will, the writer strikes and the actor strikes. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this show was almost in the last couple weeks, for 6 weeks. There's some smaller time frame of this show being completed with the principal filming of this TV show.
Yeah, Andor you're right, a few weeks, and they were not really able. So at first, when it was just the writer's strike, they were saying they were going to try to soldier on, but that's really difficult because Tony Gilroy is the showrunner, he's the writer, and so at what point are you crossing the picket line by saying, well, why don't you say this line, Diego Luna, why don't you say this line instead? Like, if you change one word of what that script says, even in improv, you're a writer, and you're breaking their strike rules. And so It was very, very difficult for them to get underway under that strike. And then once the actor strike happened, there's just no chance.
Right. And then I think there's going to be no shortage of folks who agree that from the Star Wars television properties, Andor is the best.
Yeah, it's a big. There's people who love The Mandalorian. There's people who loved Ahsoka, and we loved those too. But the Andor is just some standout television.
Yeah, and it's really is different. It's like Mission Impossible in space. It reminds me of like a spy thriller over several episodes. And so, I mean, for that reason, the reason we're talking about this is because we're very highly anticipating these shows. And so I can super highly anticipate what Mandalorian is going to offer. And at the same time, at the same severity of anticipation, be one Andor to happen, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's, getting done with filming, and it seems maybe I'm being a little bit presumptuous, but getting these shows edited, maybe it's a little bit easier than a movie.
Well, Andor spent an entire year in post-production, which Andor Season 1 did, right, which is nowhere close to any of the other Star Wars shows spent in post. I mean, I think if you take, and this is all guesses and estimation, we know Andor spent a year, nearly. Right. But for the other shows, we don't know exactly, but just looking at timelines, Mandalorian Season 3 couldn't have spent more than 4 months in post.
Right. So, I mean, and then you add in the factor of marketing. There's just too much going on here. And then you add in the factor of the peaks and valleys with Disney. There's too much going on here with risk, and that the fans demand the highest quality of product, or it's you might as well put out a porta potty and expect it to be spotless or something. It's not going to happen.
Right. We've got those peaks and valleys that Disney talks about is one of those Bob Igerisms that we have news stories later that there's a lot of Bob Igerisms out there, and most of them are not good this week. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. He's like, you got him. He's hot and cold on Star Wars all the time, and so we're going to talk about that later. But to stay on topic about Andor and Mando being delayed, I don't feel like it's a surprise that Mando's in 2025. I think it was kind of tenuous to think it would be coming out holiday of 24. That would have been 4 TV shows really close, 4 live-action TV shows coming really close together in 24. And so The Mandalorian makes a little more sense than Andor. I'm disappointed, but also I'm okay with taking the time to polish. They're not saying we got to get these out there to meet this deadline, or we got to get these out there because we need Star Wars on people's televisions. We're always sitting here saying, take your time. If they have to take 5 more years to make a movie, that is super disappointing. But I'd rather have a well-crafted, artisanally made Star Wars movie than something mass-produced.
Right. So I don't know if it's in our lineup to talk about, and I'll just put it in here now, that the Marvels movie is the biggest disappointment for Disney ever. Right? Is it fair to say that?
No, I would disagree with ever. It is a massive disappointment. They've had some bigger bombs before. This is the biggest Marvel bomb, though. This is the biggest MCU bomb.
And that's more precise of what I was.
Yeah, definitely the biggest Marvel disappointment. Maybe not Disney and their 100-year history.
Yeah. Well, there's some animated ones back there that people have never even heard of that were stinkers, right? But my point of bringing that up is everything is being reexamined at Disney. I mean, like everything. And I wouldn't be surprised if working in any aspect of outside the parks or something like that, if you're the gate attendant or whatever, you're going to have a hard time. Everything about your work effort is being scrutinized at these places.
Mm-hmm. Well, they've got, so the accountants, the bean counters, whatever you want to call them, they've got their hands just gripped around this money purse now. And this is the same reason that we haven't heard about an Ahsoka Season 2 yet, despite all signs pointing to it. It was, according to IMDb, the second most searched television show this year, behind The Last of Us.
Right.
And according to Disney's numbers that they've released, it did well. Just talking to people, it sounds like it did well. There's a lot of things pointing to the fact that Ahsoka did well, and then in the plot of the story, necessitating a Season 2.
Right.
That without a Season 2, how do you even lead into a movie unless you take the elements into the film? And so knowing that Dave is going to have a movie coming out in the near future, in the next 3 to 7 years, we've got to get these trains rolling and on the tracks. And Andor isn't part of that, but The Mandalorian Season 4 is, and Ahsoka Season 2 is. And decisions like these delays, obviously part of it is the writer's strike, but it's foolish to say that part of it is not money at Disney. Like you're saying, Disney's getting tired of hemorrhaging money. The company has bled money this year. They had never not had. Sorry, that is ridiculous.
I hate never not.
Never not had. This is the first time. How's that? This is the first time since 2014 that Disney has not had a $1 billion film in the box office, and this was their 100th anniversary.
Yeah.
And so, 1, it's a little embarrassing for Disney. But 2, more importantly to them, they lost a ton of cash. And the only way for them to get that back is to be more judicious about the things that they greenlight. And Bob Iger has said, we're going to do, this is a Bob Igerism, is we're going to do quantity over quality. Or we're going to do quality over quantity. He says that like every 6 months. Every time Disney has a flop, he says that. And he's not putting his money where his mouth is, except maybe now he is. Maybe this is finally putting his money where his mouth is.
And so let me expound on what I think a decent chunk of the problem is, and provide a solution, or what I think the solution is going to be. And a huge issue with the Marvels, which we've seen, which we've seen in other places, is that the Marvel's movie, which was a sequel to a movie that made $1 billion, had 2 characters from a TV show in it
Right.
that people had no idea about.
And one of them was a side character in a TV. I mean, Monica Rambeau was a supporting character in a TV show.
She didn't show up till more than halfway
even
through.
Remember that she was in that movie or in that show until the trailer for the movie came out.
And so, you know, it makes me want to be a fly on the wall in these meetings about making this movie. And where was the Naismith here? Where was somebody saying like, hey, this is going to be a big problem. How do we fix this? I mean, because we even saw it with Disney, with Ahsoka. Who are these characters? Or Book of Boba Fett. How did Grogu get back with Mando? Like, and even casual fans I've had this conversation with, I don't understand how Grogu got back with Mando. And so, you know, from some sort of like smarmy salesman perspective, oh, well, you got to subscribe and go watch Book of Boba Fett. I guess you should go do that. It feels like a Carnival Barker type mentality.
Right.
You know, and it doesn't sit well with people. I mean, because people love Star Wars. They really do. And The Mandalorian is one of the coolest things ever that Lucasfilm has ever done. And so, but you're just really spitting on people with trying to transition TV characters into, I mean, don't be wrong, it's been done. Saturday Night Live is the king of doing this. They do from skits that are a few minutes and they're not making $1 billion movies,
right?
But they're making, you know, and they're making funny, hilarious for the time. They're probably, you know, they wouldn't make these movies today, right? But Saturday Night Live could make TV characters in the movies. So there's something lost in translation that Disney needs to do if they want to do this. And more to my point is like the Disney Plus is in its infancy.
Yeah. It's only lost money.
I mean, and they're trying to figure this out. And so it's climbing Mount Everest.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
The solution is figuring out how you're going to get these TV characters onto the big screen. And I think they're going to solve that with the Mandoverse movie.
Well, you had 2 very interesting points. One about Marvel and one about Disney Plus that both warrant discussing. And it's not really more about Marvel. It's more about the fact that people require homework now to watch things. Like, to go watch Captain Marvel, you had to really have seen those 2 television shows to get a great grip on what's going on. And we heard that complaint from casual fans of Star Wars that we know all over Ahsoka. And my wife watched all 4 seasons of Rebels and still complained that she was like, I'm not getting everything because she hadn't seen the Clone Wars. And so when you begin to have franchise content only standing on other franchise pieces of that content is when the foundation is so shaky. You haven't ever had, until this decade, a lot of entertainment that's required a bunch of homework to have gone and seen. When you go and see, from 2008 to whenever Endgame came out, was that 21, 20? Something around there. From 2008 to whenever Endgame came out, you could have seen random Marvel movies and gotten what was going on. You might not have gotten all of the cool little ins and outs, or, oh, who's that guy in the end credits scene? Or like I was watching Black Panther the other day, and they referenced the fact that they fixed Bucky Barnes when they're fixing the CIA agent guy. And they don't say anything about Bucky. They just have one line. If you didn't know what that meant, it didn't matter at all to your viewing experience. If you did know what it meant, cool. You remembered the last movie that came out. The only things you had to see were things in the same series. So like to watch the Avengers, all you had to do was see that movie. It's awesome that there were movies that built up to it, and you were way more gratified having seen all of them, but you could have watched Avengers, skipped everything in between, watched Age of Ultron, maybe watched the Guardians of the Galaxy, and then watched Infinity War and Endgame, and I don't really think you have much of a problem. And that's the same with all of these things of the same names, but now Marvel is expecting you to go and watch all of their stuff to understand what's going on, and Star Wars has gotten the same way with Ahsoka, and it becomes a problem that when does this end? Or will the Mandoverse movie have required you to see, you know, oh, you needed to watch 8 seasons of TV, you needed to play this video game, you needed to see all 6 of the original films, the sequels and everything else, to understand what's going on in this one movie.
Right. And back in the 90s when they did this, in early 2000s when they did this with different TV shows, It was TV shows that were like cultural phenomenons that they did a few seasons and then bam, made a movie. And again, we're not talking about, these are fan service movies. They're not out there trying to get little kids involved and capitalizing on nostalgia or anything like that. It's all like, hey, we've hit a home run. Let's go to the World Series.
Right. And well, you reference these movies, but really the one that stands out in my mind is the X-Files movie.
Oh, yeah.
You can go watch the X-Files movie and think, wow, what a great movie, and have no clue that the TV show even exists. Like if someone from my generation who didn't get to watch the X-Files when it was coming out went and sat down, searched up the X-Files, and for some reason they only found the movie, they are not going to be confused at the beginning or the end. At least for the first movie.
Right.
And so there's no reason that all of this other entertainment should not be able to stand on its own two legs. And then the point I wanted to make that you were talking about on Disney Plus is Disney Plus is in its infancy, but streaming entertainment is still in its infancy.
Really is,
I mean, we're in the first decade of it. And the reason it was so popular, the reason Netflix was able to dominate and go from a company that shipped DVDs to your house to now this massive streaming service is the fact that they were the first and that they were a way to get out of cable subscriptions. You could get a bunch of really good movies, a bunch of really good TV shows, and not have to pay for cable. And now there's a billion streaming services. We have to pick what streaming services do we want. We don't have Netflix, especially now that they do where you can't have it in the same place, because we were on my wife's parents. They live in Houston, so we can't use Netflix anymore. We're not building it into the budget anytime soon because we don't care enough about it. And so Netflix lost out on viewership. They didn't lose out on any money, but they lost out on viewership. And I imagine they may have lost some money because people were like, well, if my whole family can't use this, I'm going to go to a service where they can use the whole thing.
Right.
So we and every other middle-class American family have to measure out what streaming services we're going to pay for. And Disney Plus is a really, really hard sale unless you just love Star Wars or love Marvel or really like Pixar, which the third category, there's not like that many people, or unless you have really little kids. But Disney Plus isn't like a necessity for some people, but Netflix is a much bigger necessity in a lot of people's minds.
And so I take this for granted a bunch. What these subscription services enable you to do is if you want to watch a show, you subscribe to it, you binge it, you unsubscribe.
Right.
And so like the most prominent example I remember, it was Game of Thrones. People would subscribe for that when the season was on and then ditch it afterwards. And stuff like that.
And this week I saw that Max and Paramount Plus are in talks to merge, which is super awesome because I have a Max subscription and we don't have Paramount Plus, but there's a lot of stuff on there I'd like to watch.
Paramount Plus has all the Star Treks.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'd like to watch on there. And so I'm really excited that there's talks of them merging, and I hope that they do it. And I'd love to see
equal opportunity sci-fi fans here.
Yeah, we are. And so I'd love to see other streaming services merge. Disney owns Hulu.
Yeah, I don't know why. Merge too.
Yeah, well, see, merge. Look, if you got to jack the price up $1 or $2, that's fine. Don't make the merger the combined subscription cost like I was already paying for both of them anyways. And then, that's the exact amount the price raises, because then you're going to lose a lot of people who are only doing Hulu or Disney because they're not going to want, oh, wow, if you're some random, college-aged woman who's watching Hulu for all of these great romances that they have on there, and then they say, all right, we're going to make you pay $5 more so you get Star Wars, she'll be like, who cares?
Right.
And so these companies are approaching this. Obviously, they're going at it from a we want to make money and we want to make money quickly perspective, because that's always how they do things. That's why a lot of what we're talking about today on delays, not just surrounding TV shows, but also surrounding movies, that's why all of these delays happen. That's why they get caught with their hands in the cookie jar, and that's why we say, hey, this movie was supposed to come out and it's not coming out. That's because there's so much pressure from the parent company, from Disney, on Lucasfilm and on Marvel and on other companies that are under their umbrella to announce projects that are half-baked, that don't have a cast yet, that the script's not finished yet. And that's because if they're not announcing, they're not staying in the headlines, because we live in the 24-hour news cycle, and if they're not staying in the headlines, they're losing money. And so you just get this machine monster thing that feeds on itself and that continues to move forward. A raptor that continues to move forward and gets its tentacles out in front of it, and it announces this show, and then it flings the tentacle back, and the show doesn't exist anymore. Now there's a new one slapped down in front of you, and we spend all our time getting super excited about headlines and super excited about, oh, this next one's coming out, or oh, they announced this project, when as Star Wars fans, we've experienced the fact that that's not even close to a guarantee. They are way under 500 on announcing projects and getting them completed.
Yeah. And it makes you feel, I don't know, like you spent too much money on a buffet. You got there, they're out of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, look, you spend this money on Disney Plus, and then you have large gaps in content. And again, we're always asking for quantity over quality. I would happily pay my Disney Plus subscription, only getting 2 Star Wars shows a year, if they're great. But if they're bad, then I don't want to keep paying this cost just to keep. We got 4 Star Wars shows. You're basically watching a new Star Wars thing every week. That's awesome, but half of it's terrible. And I'm not saying that that's the case right now, but I'm saying that that's been the case with Marvel, and there's no reason that Star Wars couldn't head down that same direction without a course correction.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I never even started Miss Marvel, and I stopped halfway through. Who was the ghost guy? I don't even remember his name.
I didn't watch Miss Marvel. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I didn't watch it at all.
This was the other show that came out with
Monica Rambeau.
No, I watched that one. That
was WandaVision. That was good. I loved that show.
WandaVision. I like Loki. Both seasons were phenomenal.
Haven't seen.
See, you can't remember this one. I know it exists. It was the guy.
Moon Knight.
Moon Knight.
Oh, yeah. Ghost guy. That was a bad description. That wasn't a good description.
Well, I mean, goes to show how much that. I mean, that show didn't stick with me.
Yeah, when I was a comic book collector, I collected specifically 3 superheroes. I collected Spider-Man, Daredevil, and Moon Knight. I didn't even finish the Moon Knight TV show.
Oh, my gosh.
Because I just wasn't, it just wasn't there for me. It wasn't interesting. I love Oscar Isaac, too. He's one of my favorite parts of the sequels. I think he's a good actor, but I just wasn't captivated by that show. And that's the worry, is that, they come, part of Marvel's problem is that they are coming quickly, too, is that they're coming too fast, and you just don't have time to blink. I don't want to watch a Marvel show every week. I would do that happily for Star Wars, but I'm in the minority. General audiences don't want a Star Wars show every week, and that's understandable.
Right.
And so when you have it coming so fast, that fatigue sets in way too quick. And so these delays, we're discussing these delays. They're not specifically a bad thing in this situation, but that doesn't mean that what caused the delays is not a problem, because it's causing other delays that is a problem. I can be okay with Andor and The Mandalorian being set back for a year because I really want those productions to do well.
Yeah, quality's a big deal.
Doesn't mean that I'm okay with the fact that they had to be delayed in the first place. I would have rather the quality get made in the timeline you gave us, because Disney and Lucasfilm are the ones who are setting the timelines for themselves and then disappointing us. It's not like we say as fans collectively, you got to have a Star Wars movie out by 2025 or we're out of here. We're not interested in your brand anymore. They set the date. They say, we're going to have this out. And again, that it all goes back to what I was saying, that it's a lot of pressure from Disney and Bob Iger and the stakeholders to say, get something out there because we want to be in the news. This December, I'm sure we're going to get some big Star Wars news surrounding something, whether it be a video game, a movie, a TV show, because Star Wars is synonymous with the holidays. Will that news be a good thing? It will sound like a good thing because it's going to say, here's what this movie's going to be about, or here's the next big TV show, or here's the next big video game. But is it really a good thing that they announced that, or did they only announce it because they know Star Wars is synonymous with the holidays and they want you talking about it at the family dinner table?
And so the only thing that gives me pause with that is that I want it to be substantive and real. I don't want it to be like, oh yeah, Tika Waititi's movie's coming right around the corner.
Yeah. Rian Johnson's trilogy's on the way.
Yeah. I don't believe you.
Right. Yeah. Fool me once, shame on. Yeah. And so I totally agree with you. It's ridiculous to get these announcements, and it's bad that as Star Wars fans, we have to say, I'll believe it when there's a trailer. I'll believe it when I see footage. I wouldn't even believe that the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew weren't coming if we didn't know that they screened trailers at Celebration.
Right.
And that's another thing, is if you get so far out ahead that you screen a trailer exclusively to Star Wars fans in April of 2023, and now your TV show's not going to come out until November, December of 2024. That is ridiculous, because now there's this section of fans who got to go to London, which is already a tall ask, to get to see this trailer. And I'm not going to kid around. Obviously, we've seen the trailer. It's floating around online, but that's not the point. Disney didn't want anyone to see that trailer. And the fact that it exists is a problem in the first place, because if you didn't think it was ready to be made, if you didn't think it was going to get released, regardless of if the strike happened, you shouldn't have released that trailer. If the strike... If you regard one,
there were murmurs.
The strikes
about
are predictable.
Yeah,
they're not like they happen in cycles. You know, contracts are coming up. So one, plan for that. Two, it's the same thing as they say when you're playing a game, right? That comes down to dice rolls. If your game came down to dice rolls, you made a mistake already. It never should have gotten that far.
Right.
If your production comes down to delays, in quotes, outside of your control, because you're 50% of the equation in a strike negotiation, so it's not outside of your control. But if your TV show getting shelved for a whole year because of delays, again, in quotes, outside of your control, you shouldn't have released a trailer for that show to begin with, because it wasn't ready. If it can be delayed by external factors, it wasn't ready.
Yeah, you're right.
So there's additional stuff to speculate based on this report. So the other really interesting thing to talk about is where are Bad Batch and Tales of the Jedi Season 2. So we know Bad Batch Season 3 is on its way. We know Tales of the Jedi Season 2 is on its way. Tales of the Jedi Season 2 announced at Celebration. Bad Batch Season 3 announced shortly after Season 2. And we also know that for Bad Batch, it's the last season. And so there's a lot of heart and soul poured into that show. A lot of people really like it. We really like it.
Yeah, we do.
We enjoyed Bad Batch a lot.
So, sorry to interrupt. One of my questions about the Bad Batch, though, is there anybody out there subscribing? Have you heard about Bad Batch? You need to go check that out. I'm going to go subscribe to Disney Plus and watch Bad Batch.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. And so, how much does that do for Disney?
For
Lucasfilm?
That's always my question. Star Wars has had a long history of animation. Obviously, the first time Star Wars was animated was in the holiday special. So, one of the first Star Wars things ever. But we have the old droid show. We have the original Tartakovsky Clone Wars. We have, obviously, the Clone Wars and Rebels and Bad Batch that all kind of rolled into each other. And since 2008, we haven't really been without Star Wars animation on TV except for a few years. And so, one, that's just kind of now a built-in part of Star Wars. Star Wars without animation is, what, like 80% Star Wars, right? Like, there's a big portion of the story is now told in animation. And that's a good thing. I like the animation. You can do things in animation that you're never going to be able to do in live action.
Right.
I mean, it's just not unless you go to the point where you make these Lion King remakes that you say live action, and it's like, this entire movie is just a green screen.
Yeah.
And so how really live action is it? And so you have animation as a core part about it. And I'll run across people in the wild who will talk to me about Star Wars, and they know that we do the podcast, and so obviously they're like, oh, hey, let's talk about Star Wars. I'll pretty intentionally avoid talking about the Bad Batch for the only reason that I expect they haven't seen it. Not that it's not important or whatever, or not that it's not good, because I think it's pretty good. But I usually am like, oh, this person hasn't seen the Bad Batch. But more often than not, if they approach me and mention that they've seen the Book of Boba Fett or Obi-Wan Kenobi or Ahsoka, they probably saw the Bad Batch. They've mentioned the Bad Batch to me. They said, oh, I watched the Bad Batch. And this is the other really crazy thing is I would think that Star Wars animation is a pretty high barrier to entry on if you're going to like it or not based on how much you know about Star Wars or have seen. Most people that I talk to about the Bad Batch have said they like it. Now, I don't think it's driving anybody to subscribe. I still agree with you. It's not driving people to subscribe. I wish we had the numbers on that show, though, because just in the wild, I'm always the most surprised talking to random people who say, I liked the Bad Batch. And I'm like, this person is a bigger Star Wars fan than I realized.
Yeah, and so I think the answer to the question is Lucasfilm is making these shows for fans. They're not making them intentionally as a draw for the rando to go subscribe.
Well, and we can't ignore the fact they're making them for kids too. They're making them so kids are invested in Star Wars and will be Star Wars fans for the rest of their life. That's why they make the Young Jedi Adventures. Right. They don't make that show for you and me.
Right.
They make that show so they can get a 4-year-old hooked on Star Wars, and then you've got Star Wars from the age of 4 to 99. and there's nothing in between that you aren't going to be able to find a Star Wars for you.
Exactly right. My kid sleeps with 2 Grogu pillows now. And so my point is, gosh, there's a story to tell here, right? That some creator at Lucasfilm, and I guess it's Filoni, still provides some sort of who's writing these. Who's writing Bad Batch season 3?
Jennifer Corbett's the showrunner, and so she's been a veteran of Lucasfilm Animation for a while. Dave's name is on it, but I would be astounded if he had pretty much anything to do with day-to-day operations on that. I think they probably take him the finished product and say, "Is this all right?" And he goes, "Thumbs up," because I just don't think I can't conceivably imagine that he has the time to be working on the Bad Batch.
So that's her story. And she's got one more season to tell it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and I'm sure this person is fantastic, but, you know, like we have all these big names at Disney that we follow, you know, Kevin Feige, Kathleen Kennedy, Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, all these other stuff. And Dave Filoni got to start making this Clone Wars and had made other animated shows behind that. And so, what kind of resources are they giving Jennifer here I mean, she's doing a good job, but is she getting the support she needs to make this elevated product, or are they putting her on the back burner?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So she's the creator and the writer for the Bad Batch. And previously she had worked on Resistance, which wasn't this amazingly well-received show. I think it's great. I think everybody should go watch it once. It's hard to watch again because it's for children. But there is some meat on that bone, and there is connections to the sequels that improve those movies through Resistance. They're small, but they're there. And Kylo Ren shows up in this show multiple times. Poe Dameron shows up in this show multiple times. Like,
right.
It's not like this show is inconsequential. We even know that the father from that show, Hamato Ziono, shows up in Ahsoka. And so this show is not forgotten. It's not going to be not connected in any way, and it's not a stepchild. It's there.
Right.
And so she has a little bit of experience there, and she came into Bad Batch. She's been with the Bad Batch the whole time, and the Bad Batch has gotten good reception. So maybe someone like Jennifer Corbett is Dave Filoni in her infancy. I mean, there's no reason that she couldn't be someone that Dave is working with closely and that is trying to, because when Disney came and acquired the company, they did a big house cleaning at Lucasfilm Animation. I mean, they knocked out, Dave was one of the only guys left. He was one of the only guys with any kind of life preserver there, and they cleaned house on a lot of the creators and a lot of the artists and a lot of the writers. And so anybody left over from before that, I'm not really aware of them. And so we have to be able to point to people who have this direct relationship with Dave for who his, intended successor might be. Just as George Lucas kind of groomed him and helped him become who he is and grow in his understanding of Star Wars and just in his understanding of creating content and film and TV and movies, we can only hope that Dave is doing the same thing with not just one person, with multiple people in Lucasfilm is the hope. That's ideal.
Yeah. And so you're playing a trailer here of Bad Batch, and it occurred to me.
Oh, yeah, that was an accident. I was on the IMDb page.
Yeah, that's fine. Something that popped up there occurred to me. Why I care about the Bad Batch so much is like the Omega character. They built this show with some longevity in mind.
Oh, yeah.
In my opinion, yes, the Bad Batch is only going to be 3 seasons. But what that means to me is these characters, for the most part, like the older clones, their story's going to be told. Totally. I mean, we had Tech die. Spoiler alert. Tech died in the last
if
season.
Anyone's upset about that being a spoiler.
Well, it's a huge deal, right?
Oh, it's a big deal. 8 months ago, but yeah.
Well, and so what I crave out of this is, and what it feels to me like they were aiming for, is some longevity with this Omega character. What if they made this Grogu character and they're like, oh, well, it's too much money to do streaming anymore. We're shutting down Disney Plus. You can go watch stuff on, because you go watch all the kid shows on Netflix, and even still, Netflix is buying a bunch of Disney movies to show on Netflix, right? And
it's not unreasonable to think that Disney Plus could get shut down in the next decade. If those bean counters
or
say
half of them, if they're all merging and it's $30,
yeah,
if it gets up to be $100 a month or something, you might as well subscribe to cable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And TiVo, that's an old word.
That's not really a word anymore.
Yeah, and record the shows that you want to watch.
Uh-huh.
I mean, because that's super convenient. You get home and you watch it, and you have a nice day.
Yeah,
it's a little bit more convenient because, like, maybe you work Thursday night when Loki comes out, and so you can come home on Wednesday morning and crack open your breakfast and eat it and watch your TV show. So you still can with, I don't know what point I'm making there, but that's a tangent. But what I'm saying is this animation needs to continue somehow, and I'm really curious. Like, are they going to whack it after this season 3? Or are they going to do the little one-offs like Tales of the Jedi here and there? Or are they going to have some other project like, I don't have any idea. I can't even fathom what it is. What would Omega exist in?
Well, I have an answer for you there. I have a very succinct answer there because I think that there's a home for her because we had a really good discussion in our Discord this week about this very topic. And it was what happens after the Bad Batch season 3 because one, they're not going to kill off a child character in an animated show. They're going to kill off child characters in Revenge of the Sith and in other places. Not going to kill a child character off in an animated show. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
Now, that's not to say that the rest of the batch might not kick it, but Omega's going to stick around. She's young. She has potential. People like her.
Character.
She's a good character. Yeah, when I first get introduced to the Clone Wars, Ahsoka's super annoying for the first 3 seasons. When I first get introduced to Rebels, Ezra's super annoying for the first season. When I first get introduced to Bad Batch, Omega's annoying for like 2 episodes. And then I'm totally on board. I'm like, She rocks. She's great. And so they nailed a kid character that they often don't nail. I mean, look back to The Phantom Menace. Kid characters are not always welcome in Star Wars. And so when you have one like Omega that lands immediately and that pretty much everybody loves, I never see anyone complain about her. I've seen people complain about the show or the team or whatever, but not her. When you have someone like that, they stick around. And so just the quick pitch for how she sticks around is obviously the Book of Boba Fett season 2. She's Boba Fett's sister. They're identical twins. Yeah. And so there's no reason that that show's not getting made. I mean, there is no Book of Boba Fett season 2, and I'd be willing to bet that's never going to happen because if they're looking at costs and how much things cost and where they want to spend their money, it's not going to be on a show that was not as well received. But Omega has a home in the Star Wars galaxy. She has longevity. She has a story surrounding Boba Fett. And until we get the wrap-up of Season 3, she might have more story. We don't know. We don't know where her character is going to lead. Yeah. But to keep talking about the Bad Batch and about Tales of the Jedi, so, again, it's not mentioned in the article. And so that's a little worrying because why would they not release the Bad Batch? We know that Disney doesn't weigh the animated and the live-action shows the same. Like you said earlier, they release these shows. They release the Bad Batch for hardcore fans, or for fans who are going to be willing to go watch animated shows. And so they released the Bad Batch right alongside the live-action Mandalorian. Super hard for Star Wars podcasters. They are not thinking about us at all.
Yeah.
But for fans, there's a lot of live-action people that are obviously not watching the Bad Batch because, they're just casual fans of Star Wars. And so Disney doesn't even weigh these shows the same because they were willing to announce them together, or they were willing to release them at the same time. And so that's kind of the same situation we're in here, is that you look for things. If The Acolyte and Skeleton Crew are the 2 live-action shows we're getting next year, we don't know for sure, but it's pretty reliable that Skeleton Crew is going to come out November, December. That puts Acolyte probably spring, summer. And so there's going to be a gap at the beginning and then a large gap in between the year. Well, they can fill it with Bad Batch for us hardcore fans, but for general audiences, there's no fill. And Disney knows that. There's just no filling that gap right there. And so were these animated shows left off of this listing because of that? Because they don't give them the same weight as live-action shows? Or is there a problem here? Are we not going to get these 2? And so I'll also say Bad Batch Season 3 and Tales of the Jedi are in 2 completely different boats on how far we know they have gotten. So for the Bad Batch Season 3, Jennifer Corbett tweeted pretty recently, I think in this week, that they had the final mix session for the Bad Batch Season 3. So that show is made. I mean, that show is complete. Other than now having to promote that show, it's done. And so I can't imagine they would hold that till 2025, more than a year for an animated show. For Tales of the Jedi, all we have is the announcement at Celebration. We have no other information. Now, for the previous season, it was the exact same way. We got the announcement, and then the show was out. There was no promotion. There was no behind-the-scenes tweets. There was no, anything. It was just like, we're going to do this. A few months later, hey, we did this. And that was cool. I liked that. But with these two shows being in completely separate boats, do you think that they're coming, or do you think that there might be a delay?
No, I think they'll be next year.
So
I really do.
Let me say one thing on why that may not be the case. On this same listing, all the Marvel TV shows are listed. The Marvel animated shows get listed. They have dates and times for the Marvel animated shows. No sign of Star Wars whatsoever.
Something like that?
Well, What If comes out this year, so not What If, but they're making a new X-Men animated TV show. And
Really?
that one's, X-Men 97 is what it's called.
Like a remake of the old cartoon? Or?
I mean, kind of. Yeah, it's new plot line and new, whatever. But, I mean, how much of a remake... When you have the exact same characters, I mean, what do you gauge as a remake?
Oh, just them fighting Sentinels, I guess. But
yeah, I mean, I'm sure that'll be... I don't know anything about the X-Men. I didn't watch that cartoon. I know about
Saturday morning.
3 of their bad guys. It's the Sentinels, Juggernaut, and Magneto. They got to fight all 3 of them, right?
Yeah, you know what? One of the quick aside here. One of the worst things about watching old cartoons. What old cartoons did you watch when you were?
Oh, when I was a
7,
kid.
8, 9.
Oh, I mean, well, the Clone Wars. Ed, Ed, and Eddie.
Okay,
Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends.
Ed, and Eddie. Have you tried to go back and watch one of those?
Yeah, me and Cassie did like 2 weeks ago.
Is it watchable?
No, not really.
I've tried to watch Transformers. That's what I would love.
Mm-hmm.
And old cartoon. They were awful. I'm like, how did I consume this? And I was a kid. But yeah.
Yeah. Quick aside.
So yeah, these shows. My deal is. Are they quoting a press release or something?
This is a press release. It's an official press release from Disney Plus UK.
Because what I want to believe is just bad writing or something. Maybe the reporter didn't look on the second page. I don't know.
No, I looked at. I read the press release myself. I found the press release and looked at it, and it is the Star Wars animated shows are not on there, and the Marvel ones are.
So I guess we need to tweet Jennifer and be like, "Hey, throw us a bone here."
Yeah, what's going on? That was to show why it's not coming. I'll now say why I think it may be coming, and the fact is that also not on that list is the Young Jedi Adventures. That show has been pretty popular. They keep making episodes for it, and there's absolutely no indication that thing's over, and they're not going to go a whole year without releasing an episode for that. It's also not on the list. So maybe when Disney Plus UK is collecting their information from Lucasfilm and from Marvel, they said, send us your TV show slate. Marvel sent everything, and Lucasfilm sent live-action stuff. And they just didn't prompt them again. That sounds ridiculous, because we're like, they're a multi-billion-dollar company with a giant advertising budget. Obviously, they're going to have somebody check that. Absolutely not true. These companies operate just like you at your job. These people are regular people. They just either didn't think about it, didn't think it was important, yada, yada, yada. There's many reasons that this could be the case. And finally, Disney Plus UK is not the end-all, be-all of information coming out of that company. I mean, they have people who definitively announce things, and it's not the Disney Plus UK Twitter.
That's right.
And so I'm hoping, and I think if you made me say it, if I were a betting man, I would say that Bad Batch Season 3 is coming. And my hope, this one's a little more shaky. My hope is that Tales of the Jedi Season 2 comes next year on May the 4th. Again, and I just think that's the way to release that show. They come out all at once. You can binge watch it. They do Visions on May the 4th when Visions is coming out. There's no reason they couldn't just drop Tales of the Jedi Season 2 on May the 4th as well.
Boy, that'd be fun.
It would.
Are they going to do another Visions?
No, absolutely. I mean, look, we don't know that for sure. That is totally on Bob Iger's chopping block. Like, just no...
I would say so.
No chance. I mean, it's just too artsy. It's just too... It definitely does not make money. If you're saying the Bad Batch doesn't drive subscriptions, there's not a person on the planet that subscribed just for Visions Season 2.
Right.
And so, that's my thoughts on it. I'm not sure. the last thing I'll say on this topic that we really need to talk about is the fact that this month, in how many days? 6. Yeah. In 16 days, Rogue Squadron is the movie. It's coming in theaters. December 22, 2023 is when Rogue Squadron was announced to be coming out. And now that movie doesn't even exist anymore. You can still find headlines. This is from a byline from Collider. The next Star Wars movie, after Rise of Skywalker, won't arrive until December 2023. And in 2020, we were bummed about that. And now we don't even know if we're getting a Star Wars movie in 2025. It might be 2026. And so when you see headlines like that, and they just keep coming, and it keeps happening, it keeps recurring, you have to know that there was more to delays than the strike. There's always more to delays than the strike. Disney's going to say it's just the strike? Absolutely cannot be the case, because just because these 2 shows may have gotten delayed for the strike does not mean that your last 20 projects that got delayed or had to be reshot or had to be remade were because of the strikes. It's because of something else.
Yeah, and gosh, that's something else is quite a broad thing.
Yeah, we can sit here and take shots at people and say, oh, it's their fault. We don't know if that's the case. We know that they're a contributing factor because they have to be. I mean, the buck stops with executives at the company. Dave Filoni is now one of these executives. He has way more responsibility than he did. When Star Wars projects flop, not only will the studio be holding him more accountable, I mean, we as fans need to be holding him more accountable because he now has a bigger say in things. If something comes out that's a stinker and Dave had his hand in it, we got to say, well, why didn't he curtail this? Or why didn't he get in front of this somehow? Or why didn't he stop this? And it's not that we're here to say that if we didn't like something, it shouldn't have been made, because that's just not true. Because there are things that I don't like that definitely should have been made, that more people like than I dislike. And so it's not saying that fans as individuals or even fans as a collective have to be this end-all be-all for Star Wars, but you have to hold these executives accountable. And that's a big problem with those Bob Igerisms. Is last week when he was talking about the problems with the Marvels, he said that one of the main problems was the Marvels was created during COVID, and so there were not enough executives on set helping them make that movie, which is what an idiot. Like, that is a crazy thing to say. That is his head has got to be just the size of Mickey Mouse's ears. I don't know. That is as an executive, how can you say that with a straight face in an interview? Well, if I were there, this wouldn't have happened. Does the guy even know how to make movies? Bob Iger is a great manager of companies. Does he know how to make movies?
So I read this exact line, and it went down this path in my mind, and it feels like to me, and I hope somebody corrects me on this, because I'm not a movie maker. All I can do is consume the things and armchair comment, right? But like, I think I have cool ideas, and I really wonder how some movies get made. It seems to me like a lot of these ideas should have been axed at their infancy, at their conception,
when they walk into the boardroom and say, "Why don't we make a movie about this? Here's the pitch." No. Why isn't that coming more often?
And so then you ask, like, I like to follow the breadcrumbs. And so why didn't they say no? What were they chasing that led them down a dark path, if you will? And that just really falls into this realm of speculation. And you can cross some lines as far as like saying this or about that, or whatever. But where the rubber meets the road is the lack of quality. And so, like, if you're an aspiring movie director or a writer or something like this, I'm fine with, and this is anything really, I'm fine with people making an attempt and failing, right? But you need to have, when you're talking about, like I can't imagine the pressure of working for Disney, especially like Filoni's being this creative director right now. I mean, because I'm sure it's not expressly said this way, but the executives walk up to him and say, all right, we're making you creative director. You have to make a movie that makes $1 billion. And you need to make another movie and another movie. gosh, when was the last time you had $1 billion idea?
Right.
Never.
Right.
Never. I mean, and you like to think that, especially if you had the resources of Disney at your back. Hey, that's great. And I think Filoni can do it with the Mandoverse tools in his tool belt, right? And surely if we did something like that, we'd hone our craft and tools also. But more my point is it feels like there's some directors out there who are making these movies who don't have the chops. They were asked to make $1 billion project and they failed. And so like I'm fine with people taking that risk and failing because we're going to get some better quality out of it in the long term. But I want all of these people to succeed in their efforts. But you need to make your low budget thing and succeed, and then you make your mid budget thing succeed.
Right. It's a process.
10 of those things.
It's a process.
And so Disney giving a blank check to these directors, and it's not these directors' fault in a sense. It is. Everybody shares responsibility. But when you walk up to somebody and say, I need you to make $1 billion from your efforts, dude, I can't imagine the ask from that.
Right. Well, and
pressure of that ask.
You're
it's
right.
Not happening.
You're right. It's a big ask from the studio, and they are going after. This goes to discussions we've had on here many times, in that a lot of what Disney does is either chase the newest hotness, the Everything Everywhere All at Once guys directed an episode of Skeleton Crew. They're not bad. They won an Oscar. I'm not saying they're bad directors. They're probably great. And Everything Everywhere All at Once was great. And so but Disney is always trying to get them to make. Taika Waititi was big after Ragnarok. They got him. Now he's had 2 stinkers in a row that have been massive stinkers. Rian Johnson, they loved what he did with The Last Jedi, greenlit a trilogy before that movie even came out, before anybody got to see it other than the people at Disney. And so you consistently have Disney going out and trying to find talent. Either they do one of two things. They either chase the hottest thing, and it's already cold by the time they get there, and they want the hottest director to put their spin on Star Wars, and that's a problem because they need to be coming to these people with, this is the story we want you to tell. Now, help us get there. This is the end goal. Help us get there. Star Wars needs to be driving the train, not the directors. We say that all the time.
Yeah.
The other side of the coin, though, is then they're going after directors. And this is, I haven't seen anything she's made, and I'm not trying to disparage her in the fact that I think we're going to see how good her Star Wars movie is. But Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, I scratch my head every time I read the fact that she's the one directing that movie, because she just does not have the credits to direct a blockbuster film, let alone Star Wars. Exactly. She hasn't proven that she can pilot that massive ship of a $1 billion project, takes multiple years to film, there's all of this production. She hasn't proven the fact that she can do that, and even worse, they're on a timeline now. They set the date for themselves, and it's coming out at this time no matter what.
Yeah, and so I think another reason this gives people so much pause, in addition to what you said, is, and what we have said on this podcast multiple times, is we want something that has its ideas in the origin of the Star Wars universe. And I think it's without more explanation from Disney and Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy about what the conceptualization of this thing is and what the end goals are. It's that she can easily be perceived as a pushover, that she is a director robot with the strings attached to somebody else, some Lucasfilm whoop-de-doo, and she's some yes man making the movie that they want. And so the risk there to me is that the movie's going to be soulless. Right?
Made in a boardroom.
Yeah.
Which was a big problem that people had with some of the things that happened in the sequels, was that it was made in a boardroom, is how they felt. And so that really is the feel of The Force Awakens. The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, I don't think either of those films have boardroom feel. For better or for worse, they definitely have the thumbprint of the guy who made them on them.
Yeah.
And so, but before that, The Force Awakens really did feel, I mean, it's as much as I like The Force Awakens, it's a good movie. I don't dislike watching that movie pretty much anytime I watch it. but it is really similar to A New Hope. It just is a fact.
Yep.
And you can't ignore the fact that it's very similar to A New Hope. People who love that movie don't even try to defend it on the basis that it's not like A New Hope. They most often cling to the fact that if you liked A New Hope, you should like The Force Awakens.
Yeah. And so, again, like I said earlier in this episode, where were the Naismiths? Where are the people who be like, hey, doesn't this sound like something we've already seen? This has too many fingerprints of this old movie. And I want to hear from those people. I guess they don't exist.
Right. Maybe not. So enough about this topic. I think we've said what we need to say on it. I'm okay with the fact that Andor and The Mandalorian have been delayed. That may not be clear from the past hour, but I really am okay with it because I think that both those projects, one, I'm not nervous about The Mandalorian Season 4 at all. I'm also not nervous about Andor. I think both of those things are in great hands. If anything should get delayed, it's those things. And so hopefully they just take a little more time to polish them off, but fingers crossed we just stop having the words Star Wars and delay appear in articles together.
Yeah, me too.
So, Colin, our next segment, this one's really exciting. I like this question. It's going to be fun. It's just going to be a fun question to talk about. This is How the Force Works. This is our segment where we have a Patreon subscriber ask us a question, and we answer it live here on the show. And so if you're interested in doing something like that, you can head on over to patreon.com/Star Wars Station. That's not the only thing you get out of it. I mean, you can get T-shirts and stickers, access to our exclusive RPG podcast, access to our exclusive ARC Troopers podcast. You can get stuff on video. We have interviews on video. There's all kinds of stuff over there that you can go check out. That's at patreon.com/Star Wars Station. But this is the How the Force Works segment.
That's not how the Force works.
All right, Colin, so it is now time for How the Force Works, and our question comes from our Patreon subscriber, Tristan, and he asks, what are your top 3 battles in Star Wars? Now, when I read the question, I immediately went to military engagements, and then I thought, no, this is way broader. I think this is at any point 2 characters or millions of characters locking into a conflict.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, you're putting me on the spot. I didn't read this question before.
Oh, I didn't.
And
look,
I'm happy about this.
I haven't formed my list either, so I'm not saying this doesn't change tomorrow. All 3 spots could be different tomorrow, but it's worth answering now.
Yeah. So, and I know what 2 of them are. Let me think of a third one.
Yeah, I've got 2 of them as well. I need a. I don't need a third.
I'll do one. You do one. So if we overlap,
Right.
I'll think of a different
Just
one
back
just as
and
a
forth.
filler.
Yeah.
So I want to say space battles as my number 3, and I'm really having a hard time. Okay, I got all 3, and my third one, and this one I kind of think I've been thinking of a better one, but for silly reasons, this one's going to be my number 3, and it's the opening to Revenge of the Sith with the ETA-2 Actus interceptors and the buzz droids and getting onto the ship.
An amazing sequence.
For whatever reason, and it's probably because of the Star Wars Galaxies video game, that starship has a home in my heart, and that's where it originated. So that's my number 3.
Okay, my number 3 is the Battle of Hoth. When I was a kid, this was my battle. Like, I loved it. Empire Strikes Back was my favorite movie exclusively because of this land battle. I think land battles in Star Wars are awesome. We don't have a ton of them, but when we get them, they're super cool. And the Battle of Hoth just captivated me.
Yes. Yeah.
Walkers, everything about it. I love it.
So that one didn't pop into my mind. It should be high on my list. It should be. Okay, so my number 2 is the Death Star trench run.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one.
Oh, gosh. So emotional thinking about this. I mean, because it's got so many layers. If you look at it just from this macro perspective, you blew up the Death Star. And then you peel back a layer, and Luke disengages his targeting computer. And the people on Yavin. He turned off his computer. What's going on here? I mean, and think about the pucker factor these people had. We're dead. This is the last shot.
Random farm boy we put in the cockpit.
Why is this kid doing this? and he does it. I mean, really dig into this. If you don't feel this way about this that I do, then please go on Discord and let's have it. I want to impart to you my wisdom about this scene. I mean, because previously to that, you had Han Solo cause Darth Vader to wreck and save Darth Vader's life from a certain point of view. Right? Man.
I totally agree with you. There's no notes. The fact that I always point to that moment in A New Hope for when the audience and myself specifically can see what the Force means. Like, you see the reaction, and you see Obi-Wan disappear, and you see the mind trick, and you get those Force moments before that in the movie. But when Obi-Wan comes to him and when he says, turn off your targeting computer, you can do this just through the Force,
Use the Force, yeah.
You understand the impact of what this is, and it really is the foundation for the rest of Star Wars, that scene.
And that's what I'm saying. You got to go down layers. I mean, because he used the Force to pick the right spot to shoot those torpedoes, right? And blew up the Death Star, and it was this domino, a big domino that caused the fall of the Empire.
Yeah,
so cool.
Yep, I agree. So my number 2 is the Duel of the Fates for similar reasons. This used to not be the case. Now it's a beautifully choreographed lightsaber fight. Lightsaber fight choreography is not like super high on my priority list of Star Wars. Like, I get it, and I get the complaints. We absolutely scrutinized Ahsoka for it, and it needs its place. We need to be able to scrutinize when lightsaber fights look good and look bad, and they should always look good. But it's not something that on my top 10, why I love Star Wars, lightsaber fights don't make the top 10. And so it's the only reason this, again, it's the best I think it's the best lightsaber fight. It's as far as choreography goes. But until I heard Dave Filoni's interview about Duel of the Fates, I didn't really get it. But once it locked onto the fact, and Dave said it truly is a duel of the fates. If Qui-Gon had won, Anakin's destiny was totally different. It had to have gone down like that for the path that Anakin was going down.
What if Darth Maul had won? Right. All that other stuff, yeah.
And so the weight put behind that duel, I had not grasped fully until I got to hear that interview, and having heard that interview, it absolutely is it's my second favorite battle of all of Star Wars because of that reason.
Yeah. Excellent. I love that. And I love that interview. That whole concept is really cool. So my number 1 battle is a lightsaber duel. It's the duel on Mustafar.
Oh, yeah.
Obi-Wan and Anakin. And just all the little lines. You see little TikToks or Reels or whatever of people with shirts with just the letter of Anakin and Obi-Wan's dialogue between each other. And, that's what cemented Darth Vader in place. There's some people do like little comic book covers of like, what if Obi-Wan was successful there or something and was able to redeem Anakin right even there. And or what if Anakin was able to convert Obi-Wan or kill Obi-Wan.
Right.
And it shows this imposing imperial picture of Padme and their children. It's really cool concepts, but the whole thing is the quintessential meat of the Anakin Skywalker story, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's the culmination, it's the climax of the whole story. Not the whole story, but it's his period as Vader. We talk about all the time. Is he really Anakin? Yada yada. Well, this period right before that is the second most important moment in Anakin's life.
Right.
So my number 1 is another duel, super intense, very important. R2-D2 versus Yoda on Dagobah. When they're fighting over the protein stick. Not really. My actual favorite, you'll appreciate it because it's a space battle, is Return of the Jedi space battle. The Return of the Jedi space battle is so enchanting, and one of the biggest wow moments in all of Star Wars is when the Millennium Falcon is charging the fleet, and you just see TIE fighter after TIE fighter after TIE fighter zip in front of the canopy. For like 5 solid seconds, it's just more ties and more ties and more ties and more ties. And you have the Executor crash. You obviously have the Death Star explosion. You have Lando, who is just one of my all-time favorite Star Wars characters. He just is an amazing character. And so you have all of this over and over. The whole battle, I think, in movie time is like 9 minutes. I could be wrong. It's 9 or 18, which is obviously that's a bad gauge, but it's one of those two numbers. And so just to see all of it combine, I really, really appreciate that that battle specifically, that space battle.
Yeah, I mean, it's the final moments of the original trilogy. Palpatine dies. I mean, and we're not talking about. You're talking about just the space battle or everything in between.
I'm talking about just the
ground
space
attack.
battle.
Okay.
I think that the ground attack. Well, the ground attack could probably be looped in the space battle. I think the duel in the throne room is a wholly separate thing. I mean, the rebellion didn't intend for that to happen. The struggle for the freedom of individuals in the galaxy is a separate. They're intertwined, but they're not identical between the conflict between the Jedi and the Sith. And so I don't think that those two things link together as a one overarching battle. If Luke hadn't done anything, if he had lost that battle, blah, blah, blah.
He'd have stayed on Dagobah.
Yeah, they still could have destroyed the Death Star and ended it all if they needed to.
Yep.
I mean, the Emperor was distracted or whatever. I'll buy that stuff. That's fine. But really, the space battle, I think, is separate from at least the duel in the throne room, also kind of the land battle, but obviously that's way more linked together.
Well, I mean, it's regular people doing heroic things.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you can picture yourself as an X-Wing or some other YT doing the same thing, or as a gunner in one of these on the home one, kicking butt.
Well, that's
you're not going to be a Jedi deflecting Force lightning or something like that.
Right. A little aside, a little tangent here, but that's the big. This has been buzzing around on Twitter, so it's been on my mind. Is people complaining about Andor and how it didn't feel like Star Wars. And if you have to understand as Star Wars fans that Star Wars boiled down as two component parts, and it is the struggle between the light side, the dark side, the Jedi and the Sith, and then also the struggle of regular people against a tyrannical government, and or just against tyranny in general.
Right.
And so when you have those two elements, putting them together makes Star Wars, but taking them on their own can still be Star Wars. Andor is hyper-fixated on the average person's struggle against tyranny, which is just as Star Wars as swinging a lightsaber around and using the Force.
Yeah.
And so when you criticize Andor for, I loved the show, but it wasn't Star Wars enough, you just mean it wasn't Jedi and Sith enough.
Yeah, that's a non-wisdom take.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's not the same, in my opinion. And
these stories in Andor need to be told. It is a very enthralling.
Without the things happening in Andor, Luke Skywalker doesn't get off of Tatooine. Luke Skywalker dies of old age on Tatooine.
Yeah,
in
as
the
a
Empire.
Former.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe he's just a TIE fighter who just gets shot somewhere. Dies at the Battle of Endor.
Yep. On the wrong side.
Yeah, on the wrong side.
Well, Colin, that wraps up How the Force Works. You got something?
I think we did. That was a great list.
I
love the impromptu ones.
It was right off the top. I enjoyed it.
We need to do like just a TV version.
Yeah, we do. Well, and again, this list could be totally different tomorrow. I mean, I could have three completely different answers.
Yeah.
It was really just what struck me right in the moment. But
yeah.
I knew I had to have a Return of the Jedi moment. The Battle of Hoth was immensely important to me as a kid. And then Duel of the Fates. I've been thinking about that this week, too, for some reason. I don't know why, but I've been thinking about that specific interview this week.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that wraps up our How the Force Works segment. We're now going to roll into a little bit of an extended HoloNet news segment, just because we got a lot to talk about. So let's get right into it with the HoloNet news.
You made the HoloNet.
All right, Colin. Lots of news to talk about today. The very first one we'll talk about is an exclusive that came from the Bespin Bulletin. Despite the fact that Skeleton Crew has been delayed until November of next year, reporters at the Bespin Bulletin think that they have a scoop on the name of one character showing up in that show. So, as we know from people who are at Celebration, there's going to be an Ortolan character in this show, same species as Max Rebo, and they have his name. And dude, I read this and it cracked me up because it's this little blue elephant guy. You think he'd have this crazy Star Wars name. His name is Neil.
Well, if you read the article, it's spelled Neel.
Yeah, but it's still pronounced like the guy that you know down the street. Isn't there a character on Cheers named Neil or something like that?
Norm.
Norm. I'm thinking of Norm. But regardless, you know a Neil. This is... I just thought it was super funny to picture this little blue elephant just having... Oh, yeah, that's Chuck. We got all these Star Wars names. Jude Law is probably going to have the craziest Star Wars name in existence. And then we're going to have Neil over here.
Well, so, I mean, I wonder, that's all we know. I wonder if he has a last name or if he's like, does he walk around on his knees all the time? Because so many of these fantasy projects, Harry Potter's probably the biggest sin of this, is all the characters are named after their values.
Oh, yeah.
Like Darth Sidious,
Right.
stuff like that. And so I wonder, being that he's in Ortolan and probably just hops around or something, maybe maybe it's an insult.
Yeah,
like this.
maybe. Yeah. It could be a nickname, but I thought it was super funny. It's totally fine. This is totally going to upset some people. Some people are going to be like, "This is ridiculous. Why would you name someone Neil?" Well, let me remind you that the main character of Star Wars' name is Luke, which is the most normal person out of the Bible name.
That's a biblical name
that exists. So you can't really complain about real world names being in Star Wars.
Yeah, and for me, part of the magic is Star Wars names. I really loved all the new projects and getting to learn all these little things. I find it kind of fun that some names are named after their values, right? There's a video that a YouTuber, Jenny Nicholson, put out 7 years ago, how to make up Star Wars names. I just found it on Google, on YouTube, Star Wars names, and she's the first one that pops up, and she gives a real fun comedic take to it. And I mean, it brings a lot of joy to me, all these different things.
Yeah.
That these writers are able to come up with. I like it a lot.
I agree. So we have some more stories to talk about, and this one is pretty interesting. This news comes from Jeff Snyder and his Hot Mic podcast. If you listen to another podcast other than ours, it should be the Hot Mic, because Jeff Snyder does a great job, and he's always breaking Star Wars scoops, and he's usually not wrong. I mean, he's like the king of Star Wars leaks right now. And so Jeff Snyder was asked, are we going to get Star Wars news soon? And he said, yeah, next month, which he recorded that in November, so he meant December. And so we're supposed to be getting some Star Wars news this month. And he says he wouldn't be surprised if there was Star Wars news this month. And specifically, he thinks that they might be announcing some casting news surrounding the new Daisy Ridley movie. And so we know Daisy's in it. We don't know anybody else. Could this be some supporting characters, or maybe we get John Boyega announced? I mean, there's a lot up in the air, but we only know about Daisy's involvement. It would be really neat if we got this month some news to talk about regarding other names surrounding that project. Just get some meat on the bones of a movie that we're supposed to have out in 2 years.
Yeah, and like you said, it'll probably come around Christmas time, around the holidays, when school's out, and you got the most eyes on the screens. And, gosh, just giving an actor, we almost have to do a whole episode on that.
Yeah. Just one actor's name, and we can get 2 hours out of that.
Yeah,
we're great at milking that kind of stuff.
I'm ready.
Disney's really good about timing these announcements. You get a ton of news at Celebration for obvious reasons. You get a ton of news after every one of their projects, and they hold the news while it's out because they want you to be talking about what's current, the new hotness. And then they always do news right before a holiday because they know that you're going to be with your family, and that's how they get that word of mouth buzz, especially around something like Star Wars. Because if you're sitting, opening Christmas presents and your uncle's right there and he's from the original Star Wars generation, it's very easy to say, hey, did you hear about that? I always call my grandpa and I say, hey, wanted to let you know there's a new Star Wars show coming out. This one's about Boba Fett, blah, blah, blah. And he always goes and watches it. Most of the time doesn't really like it that much, but that's just because he only likes the first 3 movies. But he watches every single thing. So if nothing else, for him to call and tell me that he didn't like it. But regardless, they know the way to get buzz. They don't, they do care if my 65-year-old grandpa liked it or not. They don't care that much because he already gave them their money.
Yeah, that's fun.
So next bit of news, we got a few news stories. These are all they're small, but they're fun. They're worth talking about. The first one is that now that the strike is over, we got to see the Ahsoka cast doing some PR for Ahsoka. Because it hadn't, we didn't get that. Because of the actors' strike, they weren't able to promote Ahsoka, so we had no promotion from actors during that. Well, we've gotten a lot of behind-the-scenes videos from the official Star Wars Twitter account with Amon Esfandi behind the scenes, but not just him. We got Natasha Liu Bordizzo behind the scenes. We also got Ivana Sacno behind the scenes. It was really cool to get to see all of them kind of just doing goofy stuff back there. It seems like they have a ton of chemistry together.
It really does. I was scrolling through Twitter and saw the one with Natasha and the other actress. What's her name?
Ivana Sogno.
Ivana. And that one was hilarious.
Yeah, it was. It was. I really liked. There's a video, Amon, and they're all funny. You guys just need to go check them out. But one where he walks up, grabs a helmet off the wall, puts it under his shirt, and tries to run out of Lucasfilm with it. Just all of them are very funny. He's very clearly a funny guy.
I follow him on Twitter. He's fun to follow.
He's great at interacting with people on there. I mean, he is. You don't always get actors who like engaging with Star Wars fans for whatever reason. They had bad experiences or whatever. I mean, the famous example being Harrison Ford. That guy could care less about Han Solo and Star Wars fans.
That's a shame.
Liam Neeson's kind of the same way. I mean, he just admitted that he's kind of gotten burnt out about people asking him about Star Wars. It's been 20 years. But this Iman Esfandi, new to the universe, he's of my generation, and so he grew up with Star Wars and the Clone Wars, and just he's a prequel kid, obviously, and so now that he's gotten to engage with people and get steeped in the universe, I hope he sticks around just because of the joy that he brings to that character. He really channels Ezra Bridger perfectly.
Yeah, he really does.
And so all these videos are worth checking out. Everybody definitely needs to go see them. So Colin, the next story, I think you will be really excited about this. I'm also excited about it, but Lego Star Wars news. We're getting some new sets coming out. Pretty exciting stuff. The one I'm most excited about is we've gotten a new Clone Wars era battle pack. And so for listeners who aren't familiar, battle packs are like, you get 8 minifigures out of a pack for like $20, which is just unheard of. You're not going to get that in any other kind of set.
Yeah, it's 4 clone troopers and
5 droids.
5 droids if you count the big walker thing.
No. There's 5 droids on it without the big walker. There's 2 B1s and 3 B2s.
Yeah, and then the big walker thing.
Yeah,
so that's cool.
Yeah. And so these sets are always played down on bricks. They never have very many bricks. They're all like little play sets. I mean, you're supposed to have little battles with them. But they're great for like building your armies or just getting clones in a decent number instead of
clones and droids. Yeah.
Buying something you get one of them. One of the very first Lego sets I ever had was the first battle pack they came out with, which they had a droid battle pack and a clone battle pack back in the day for $8. Now this thing, there's no way it's cheaper than $20. I don't think we do have the MSRP, and it is not $20. It is $30.
Yeah, well.
It's just, man, Lego has gotten out of hand on their prices. I absolutely think that that's the case, but I'm still excited about it. I'm still excited about it. Yeah. But for $30 is a lot.
It is for some minifigs.
Well, and 4 minifigs and then some droids that are not like true minifigs.
Right. Man, and who would have thought that we were coming out that Lego was going to put a Clone Wars set out? I would have lost a bet.
I know. It is, and they have a lot of other things they could be putting sets out about, but they always sells. I mean, Lego especially concentrates on what sells. And so that excites me because the other set announced in this is there's a Young Jedi Adventure set coming out. These are for ages 4 up, but what excites me about that is they are doing these Young Jedi Adventure sets one at a time. Mm-hmm. They did one for the Jedi Temple that appears in that show. It must have sold well since they're making this one. Yeah. So that really excites me that it's selling well because I want that show to do well. I want that show to do well because I want more young Star Wars fans. I want Disney to see the High Republic as a viable era. I want more Star Wars animation. It's just, as that show continues to outperform my personal expectations, the happier I am.
Yeah, those sets look really cool too, and I can't wait for more. They look like a lot of fun. I need to see what my son thinks of those things.
Yeah, you definitely do. You need to ask him. How he's 4+, right? He's 5.
Yeah, he's 5.
I knew that. Okay, so our next news story, it has 2 pertinent pieces of information. Natalie Portman recently in an interview talked about the Phantom Menace and just, her time on the Phantom Menace. And one of her funny stories from that was that she got to meet Prince Charles, now King Charles, but Prince Charles at the London premiere of the movie. And he walked up to her and said, "Oh, hey, were you in the original Star Wars movies?" And she says, "I'm 18. And so, no. And she said, "But he was very friendly." And that's just hilarious. She would have been 2 years old at the time, so it's definitely, obviously not going to happen, but it was just super funny. Prince Charles didn't really have a handle on what was going on here or understand her age, but nonetheless, it was hilarious. In the same interview, though, Natalie Portman provided some interesting news for us to talk about, and that is she was asked, would you return to Star Wars? And she said, yeah. She just said, yes, I would love to. I would be super interested in returning to Star Wars. And we've gotten everybody back but her. I mean, we got Hayden and we got Ewan.
And you shared a meme, right, about this on our Instagram page.
I did recently.
That made me laugh so hard.
I'd love for her to reprise her role. It's difficult. She's not going to be a Force ghost. She's not going to be in the world between worlds. And I just don't really think they're going to be focusing on prequel content anytime soon. Even if they did, Natalie Portman does not look old by any means, but I think they would probably have to de-age her a little bit just because of the sheer amount of time that has passed. It's almost 20 years since Revenge of the Sith. And so, knowing all of that, where would you put Natalie Portman into Star Wars? How do you get her in
question?
there?
So, the reason she's in the news is, and I think this is fantastic. I've seen this. She's got a new movie coming out on Netflix called May December. I think it's some thriller type movie, or gosh, I don't even remember. But then I'm sitting there trying to remember what else she's been in. She's got a bunch of small roles.
Oh, she's been in so much.
Yeah, well, but I put her on IMDb.
V for Vendetta, Thor.
Well, I'm talking about recently.
Oh, okay. I was like, what do you
about,
mean? She's a prolific actress.
Yes, she is. But like, she was a main character in V for Vendetta. She's a main character in Star Wars, and like in Endgame, she's just not even, like we had the discussion last week of how do we rank all
in Endgame? I didn't even know she was in Endgame.
Yeah, 2019. But the last movie that I can remember that she was a main character, can you name it?
Yeah, it's Love and Thunder.
Yeah, see, that didn't occur to me.
Yeah.
That's how forgettable that movie is. But it's called Annihilation. It was a science fiction movie. It's real artsy and real cool. I liked it a lot.
Okay.
I don't think it wasn't rated very high, but I'm going to watch a Natalie Portman movie because of her science fiction creds. V for Vendetta is fantastic.
Oh, it's
Have
a
you
wonderful
seen that?
movie. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I love it so much.
Read the comic book?
And then The Professional.
I don't know that one.
Oh, it's a really old one, and she's a child in that one. And
is it pre-Phantom Menace?
Yes.
Okay.
And The Professional, Leon is an assassin. That's a cult movie. It's got a cult following, and she does a really good job in that.
Well, she
take me a
is
minute to scroll
in
through this.
Thor 1 and 2. I mean, she's the love interest. She's she's a lead in that also.
Well, I mean, again, goes back to splitting hairs a little bit, but she also does little bitty things, like she's a voice of a character in Bluey, right?
Oh, really?
And let's see here, like she's in the What If episode. She actually voices her character, her Marvel character in that.
I didn't know that.
And but like, she's not Pedro Pascal out there just being the star of the show in 5 movies a year or something like that.
Right.
And I'm exaggerating that number, but I'm real excited to see this Netflix one with her in it.
Yeah.
And I want to see more of Natalie Portman. As far as where she go in Star Wars, I'd have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, that is like, that's quite the ask.
Hologram. They could get an old recording of her.
They could. You talk about doing an animation project. A What If sounds kind of fun, but that's not going to be. I mean, she was in one episode of a What If. That's not going to be what they use her as.
And that's not bringing her back. No, I mean, if she came back, for
that
that's
do
cool.
Justice to that phrase.
Like they brought Liam Neeson in to do the voice for Qui-Gon along with his son in the Tales of the Jedi episodes. That's super cool. But we aren't like, Liam Neeson is back and is Qui-Gon until Obi-Wan Kenobi, because it's just, they're not back as. I mean, doing the voice is a little different. I've long said I didn't like the What If series basically at all from Marvel, but that's because I didn't like the premise of most of the episodes. The concept is wonderful, and they have this concept. It exists in Star Wars and comic books back when Dark Horse used to publish the comics. It's called Star Wars Infinities, and it's multiple different timelines. They do one for each of the original trilogy episodes. The Return of the Jedi one, Vader doesn't die. he comes back, has white armor, and becomes a Jedi again and fights
Oh, that's
alongside
awesome.
Luke. And I mean, there's all kinds of really cool concepts for an Infinity Star Wars show. So I've been saying they need to make one of those for a while. But I agree with you. They'd have to bring her back. There's a really not easy, but there's a good way they could tie everything together between the sequels and the prequels, because obviously when they were making the sequels, they essentially ignored the prequels. There's barely any connection. That's because Disney and J.J. Abrams and everybody else involved had this terrible case of prequelitis. I mean, back in 2015, the prequels were not back. Like, people didn't accept the prequels like they do now. Even just, 8 years ago. And so they canceled the Clone Wars. They didn't want to have anything to do with the prequels. And so because of that, the sequels don't have much of a connection to the prequels essentially at all. I mean, their connection is Luke. I mean, their connection is the Skywalker name. Yeah. And so a really easy way they could connect this is show some recording of Padme Amidala giving a speech in the new galactic government in 15 years in Rey's movie. Like, do something like that. Like, for somehow bring this, huge stateswoman, I don't know what the word is there, but back to the forefront of galactic politics somehow with just an old recording of Padme Amidala. Great way to get her in there. Same size cameo as Liam Neeson and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and it just fits.
And your idea wouldn't throw out all the bomb throwers like, oh, you're going to ruin the character like they did with something with the Obi-Wan show.
Right, yeah, exactly.
A lot of those people are like, this is too risky. They're going to ruin these characters. If you did what you're saying, and I don't know what aspect. I mean, like you there's far-fetched that, oh, she's a clone or something like that. I don't want that.
No, I don't want that either.
That's absurd.
I don't want that either.
Somehow Padme returned.
Yeah, that would be that one's tough to deal with. And she could, there's feasibly she could come in a vision to somebody, but it'd have to be something about Luke and Leia for them to have a vision about her. Same way that Ben Solo had the vision of Han.
I know another big stretch is she could, and it shouldn't be done, and it's a bad idea, but it popped in my head. She could be like this, have this narrative with Ahsoka in season 2 as the sister, like the owl.
I understand.
The more I morphed into Natalie Portman.
Well, that was something that I do hope they explore a little bit in Ahsoka. Was they tried to give her and Padme? They did give her and Padme a relationship in the Clone Wars, and it was good. It just I wanted to see it continued more, and I'd like to see it continued more somehow there. But Leia and Luke also need to have some way to grapple with their mother. There are ways to bring her back. There are people more creative than us, probably trying to think of this idea right this second. Hopefully,
you heard my
trying
ideas.
To think of
Disney, hire me.
Yeah, and so. The last piece of news for us to talk about today, Colin, is just one that I'm super excited about. It's kind of a small blurb, but Dial of Destiny hit Disney Plus on December 1st. So anyone who didn't go to the theaters to go see the new Indiana Jones because you were, you had some trepidation because of the Crystal Skull, or, you weren't going to go, for whatever reason, you didn't go see the Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny. One, you hugely missed out. Massive, massive miss right there. Should have gone and seen it. But two, now you have to go watch it on Disney Plus, because we did a review of the movie on this podcast. It was the first ever movie review on this podcast. Indy is Star Wars' cousin, so we feel like we have license to talk about it, and it was phenomenal. I loved the movie. I think it ranks up there just as it holds up right underneath and just by a hair under the original films. And so I think everybody needs to go see it.
It really does. We had so much fun at the theater. We had so much fun making the podcast.
Yeah, we had a blast making that podcast.
And I use it all the time. It's the Indiana Jones commemorative tin that they sold at the theater. It's fun.
Yeah, we had a blast. And so definitely, guys, y'all need to check that out. Just wanted to make sure everyone was aware Indy 5 is now on Disney Plus. So, Colin, that wraps up our news segment. We got one more segment to head into. Super excited to hear yours, mainly because I'm super excited to talk about mine. And that is Star Wars Moment of the Week.
We would be honored if you would join us.
All right, Colin, what is your very awesome and exciting Star Wars Moment of the Week?
No, mine's simple. It's following the previous themes. And really, I've been super busy, not much going on. I'm leaning into a bunch of Warhammer stuff. But I'm opening my Star Wars Advent calendar, and I was extremely super excited and pleased that the very first little item was Luke Skywalker in a Christmas sweater.
Yeah, nice.
I mean, so many of these in the past have been like sequel characters or this or that, and Darth Vader's in all of them usually. I don't think he's in this one, but it's Luke Skywalker. I can't remember the last time I got a Luke Skywalker minifig.
Yeah, that's awesome. The last Luke Skywalker minifig I got was when Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga came out. The blue milk drinking Luke.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm holding one for you. It's the Luke hallway scene.
Yes, you are. I still need to get that. Been years now.
No,
A year.
they're not going anywhere.
So, my Star Wars moment of the week, the one I'm so excited to talk about, is I'm playing a classic Star Wars video game that I found on my Xbox X. It's emulating the 360. I'm playing Force Unleashed once again.
Wow.
It's been years since I've played this game.
Did that cost
Basically,
anything?
forgot the plot. $3.99.
What a heck of a deal.
Yeah, no, I also got KOTOR 2 for $3.99.
Yeah. That's
Oh,
awesome.
and KOTOR 1 for $3.99.
So-
They were all $4. I don't know why.
So
it
how
was around
far-
Black Friday.
How far along are you?
Just got to where Starkiller is discovered by the Emperor, and the Emperor makes Vader throw him out of the airlock. But he survives and is able to come back. So, just basically right after the Vader missions. And it has been so fun to get to
That's
fight
awesome.
these Jedi, see this stuff, see, Yoda bot on Raxus Prime, get to see...
I love Raxus Prime.
Yeah, get to see Shock T. It was awesome. I've really been enjoying it. The reason I picked the game up is because in our RPG that we record, we recently went to Raxus Prime.
Yeah.
And I was
that-
like, I want to remember what this planet was like. So I got the game and started playing again.
It has a good spark.
Yeah, it was. It was a great spark. And so I've been enjoying it. Graphics are awful. I mean, look, for
yeah.
now,
Yeah.
for the time, I remember thinking, holy cow, this is amazing. They were super bad. Like,
Yeah.
it looks awful.
Yeah. Yeah. That's always that. Memories are always fondly remembered.
Right. Exactly.
To glom onto yours just a tad, I recently found out I'm going to have to get a console.
Yeah, you did.
I feel so depraved.
I know. I saw that. Yeah, because GTA, right?
GTA 6. Man, I'm not... I respect the role players in GTA, but I have over 2,000 hours in GTA 5. I was there for the midnight pre-release when they did those things. And I ought to find one for this GTA 6 when it comes out.
Yeah, you should.
But if you come across an Xbox, I'll join along in the nostalgia with you on this
Yeah, okay.
Star Killer and this and that.
Yeah, you need to. You definitely need to.
Really, I'm going to play it on PC, but
Right. Well, you still need to play it because you never played it, right?
I never played it.
Yeah, it's worth playing. I mean, you're going to really enjoy the story. And once you play it all the way through, you're going to be like, why didn't I pick this up sooner?
Yeah,
I mean,
you're right.
It's really fun. It's
Yeah.
really fun. But that's my Star Wars moment of the week. So that
That's awesome.
wraps up our podcast this week. We appreciate you guys sticking around and listening with us this far. If you've made it this far, we would love if you could leave us a 5-star review, Spotify, Apple, give us a thumbs up and a like on YouTube, or a thumbs up and a subscription if you're listening on YouTube. But all of those things, they help us the most of anything that you could possibly do because they allow us to game the algorithm and keep getting more listeners and keep getting more supporters. And it's just a blast talking to you guys every week, and we want to keep doing it.
yeah, you can listen to our podcast on so many different places. YouTube even has them. Like them on there. Share them to your friends.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever your favorite platform is, and we're trying to get to more with reels and memes, all this other. Our favorite one we have the most is Instagram. Star Wars.station. That was our first place.
Yeah, great community over on Instagram. Love Twitter, SW_station.
Yeah.
We got communities that you can join and engage with other Star Wars Station Nation listeners. That is our Discord. You can find that link in the description of this podcast.
Great discussions.
Always
on there.
great discussions. The
That thing
Facebook
is-
group, Star Wars Station Cantina, same
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
We also have a Twitch that we're not on super often, but we are sometimes, and when Outlaws comes out, we'll be back there. So find us at twitch.tv/Station Media.
Yeah.
And you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Star Wars Station. I gave you guys the long plug earlier, but, go check it out. Tiers start at $1. So
Yeah.
we would love for any of the support that you can find us there. And Colin built us an awesome website, StarWarsStationPodcast.com.
It's a Shopify website, so all the security and everything that goes along with that is built in. And we got stickers on there. And we need to get more on the ball and put more designs out. The cool ones the ones we have are really cool.
Yeah.
I like them a lot. Sad Robot Club. Those are original conceptual designs by Carter and implemented by our fabulous artist, Kaylee Speaks. And she does a fantastic job.
She does. She does an absolutely great job. But guys, I think that wraps up this week's podcast. please continue to listen. And until you join us next week, we should talk about what we're doing next week real quick before I close us out.
Yes, we should.
We got a super surprise and exciting email.
We teased it at the start.
We did, so we've got to talk about it. We almost skipped completely over it. We got a surprise email from
Penguin Random House,
and they're the people who publish Star Wars books. You know, we've had a relationship with them all of this year, got to review a lot of their new Star Wars books. Well, they're releasing 2 new print copies and audiobooks for Outbound Flight and Survivor's Quest. They are Legends books that have been reprinted into the Essentials Legends collection, and we're listening to them. They're narrated by our great friend Mark Thompson, and we're super excited over the next 2 weeks to be bringing you guys our reviews of those audiobooks.
I'm a good part of the way through Outbound Flight. It is phenomenal. I really like it.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been very good.
Because it's a Outbound Flight is Joris Sabaoth, his expedition outside of the galaxy, and it doesn't start. Oh, hey, bye. There's politics involved.
Lots of politics.
And this is it's basically, being that this is an EU thing, it has evolved into a what if. It's a different point of view of what was taking place after the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, there's definitely contradictions for things that happen in the canon timeline, but that's what the Legend stuff is good for. I mean, it's great to see what they had written back then, and this book is certainly a product of the prequels with the politics involved. And so
pre-Phantom Menace. Sorry, I got to get it right. We're going to have a more in-depth. Yeah. Thoughts in my head.
Yeah.
Escape.
Yeah, and so I've read Outbound Flight before. Colin hasn't, so we're going to have a great discussion surrounding that. And then neither of us have read Survivor's Quest. So in 2 weeks, we're both going to be fresh talking about Survivor's Quest.
Yeah, so fun.
Yep, lots of fun. We hope you guys will continue to join us for it. And now I get to say, until next time, the last and only thing you got to do is stay wizard.